The fact that I found out that my wife was cheating on me is something that I wish I could tell you in a way that is sophisticated or unusual, but I am unable to do so. As if it were a tired cliché from a terrible story, it took place. My employer is a manufacturer of automobile components. I am the manufacturer of brakes. I am fortunate enough to be one of the people who actually gets to do it. This is one of the most antiquated machines you have ever seen, and I operate it from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight, 5 days a week, for a total of 8 hours. Eye protection, earplugs, steel-toed shoes, and a denim apron are all items that I choose to wear. Every single day, I am able to meet my quota, and if I am fortunate, I will receive a bonus at the end of the year. I am blessed with a 3-bedroom home, a lovely wife, and 2 sons, both of whom are currently enrolled in elementary school. For the past 12 years of marriage, everything appeared to be going well, until today. 5 different stations are responsible for putting the shoes together. Every one of them is powered by compressed air. For the past 8 years, we have not experienced any issues with the apparatus. This morning, the compressed air system froze up in the middle of the shift. It is imperative that the air that is used to run all of our machines be completely dry. The filtration and dehydration processes are carried out by automated machinery that never fails, or at least, almost never fails. This evening, the dehydrator system was unable to properly vent the moisture that had accumulated. As a result of the fact that I am not a scientist, the only thing I am aware of is that when high-pressure air and moisture come together, there is freezing, and everything comes to a complete grinding halt. Instead of having us wait around, they simply sent the entire crew home without paying them, although they did not pay them. I suppose you could say that the high humidity has ruined every single moment of my life. My wife, Marcy, was being bounced up and down by a large, hairy back when I opened the door to the bedroom. All I could see was the back. Instinctively, I activated the light that was hanging above me. As soon as I became aware that Marcy was not sleeping, I yelled out, "Goddamn, Danny, what the hell are you doing at home?" It was my expectation that she would be terrified, apologetic, and ashamed. However, all I got was a witch who was angry with me. "What the hell is going on?" "Oh, my goodness, you are such a jerk. You have a good understanding of what is taking place. I am sorry that you were forced to witness it, but if you had arrived at your house at the time that you were supposed to, it would not have occurred. He never would have been here, or I never would have seen him." He had turned his back on me and was now staring at me with a smirk on his face. The hairy back had turned over. A half-assed attempt at modesty resulted in Marcy pulling the covers up over her head. The most significant error I made was to grab the guy as soon as he got out of bed. While he was standing, he had a significantly larger size. The reward for my foolish enthusiasm was 2 very, very hard blows to the ribs. I was rewarded with both of them. In spite of the fact that I was on the ground and desperately trying to catch my breath, I was never able to land a punch on him. I am not certain, but I believe that I was knocked out around that time by a blow to the side of my head, which caused me to pass out. My ribs were bandaged by a medical technician of some kind when I found myself in the emergency room of the hospital. I was there for some reason or another. An expression of disgust could be seen on Marcy's face as she sat in the chair that was adjacent to the hospital examination table. After completing his work, the technician exited the room. "Marcy, who the hell was that guy, and what was he doing in our house?" "He goes by the name Tony. I am a friend of his, and I extended an invitation to him to come to my house." "You were playing a joke on him. During the time that our children were sleeping just down the hall, you were engaging in sexual activity with him." "Yes, I am aware of that. They would not have awoken if you hadn't caused such a commotion, they would have been asleep. In order for me to bring you down here, I had to secure the services of my sister to watch them." "What the hell was he doing there? What is the number of times that you are going to ask the same question?" "We were engaging in sexual activity. It was a sexual encounter. Do you find that to be so difficult to comprehend? Is this a regular thing, or was this the only time? Tony and I have been engaging in a relationship for approximately half a year at this point. This was something that we were attempting to conceal from you. It is not out of the ordinary for us to visit the house, but I was unable to find a babysitter. Is it over now? Danny, it is not yet over, she said. However, Tony is a fantastic partner in bed. You are a wonderful father and a wonderful husband. I do not believe that there is any justification for us to get rid of it simply because it is in the open. I solemnly swear that we will no longer get together at the house whenever we get together. This is not fair to either you or the children. I need to apologize, Marcy. It is not acceptable to do that. It comes to an end now. In the event that you make any attempt to put an end to my relationship with Tony, I can assure you that you will come to deeply regret your actions. You have just been beaten to the point of exhaustion, and Tony did not even register a single sweat. It is possible for me to guarantee that it will occur once more regardless of what you do or say. Everyone that we know will find out that your wife is cheating on another man, and you are incapable of putting a stop to it because you are such a jerk. It will be first discovered by all of our close friends and neighbors. I will see to it that your family is aware of how pitiful and hopeless you are as a person. It is inevitable that the guys you work with will begin to curse and insult you. Take a second look, Danny. Your life is going to be a mess. I am willing to bet that even your sons will feel ashamed of you. You just don't care what other people think of you, do you? You would make yourself look like a 304 just to put me down? If it is necessary, I will, but I am betting that you will not have the courage to take that risk. I believe that Tony is correct in his assessment that you are a jerk. Danny boy, you are going to have to take it in stride and learn to live with it. Without a doubt, who the hell is this individual? Does he have a job location? Danny, he is employed by no one. At the luxury car emporium located on Lancaster Pike, he is the proprietor of Continental Classics. You are aware of the location that you have always desired to visit but failed to do so. Yes, Danny, that is all. In addition to being more intelligent than you are, he is also more attractive in bed than you are. He is richer than you are. In addition to this, it seems that he is more powerful and skilled with his fists than you are. Why don't you just marry him if he is so damn great? Dude, that is the reason I continue to have you around. Tony does not have a lot of affection for children, and I have no plans to give up my own. In order for me to be with him, you get to play the role of a house husband and a father, while Tony gets all the affection. Why do you find that to be such a difficult concept to grasp? I am supposed to like this arrangement? There is no other option available to you. There are two options, either you learn to live with it or the entire world will discover what a loser you are. You should know that I am currently moving all of your belongings into the guest room. I do not believe that it is necessary for us to share the bed any longer because the cat has already been let out of the bag. The moment Marcy stood up to leave, I watched her. I was a little bit relieved to see her leave. Just curious, darling, but who took care of the kids when you were out with Tony? In most cases, Karen was the one who was responsible for watching them, but there were times when I took them to your parents' house. By the way, Karen is the one who took the initiative to put me in contact with Tony. As Marcy was leaving the room, I made a mental note to express my gratitude to Karen. It was the following morning when they let me go. There was no Marcy present. It was up to me to decide whether I would call someone or take a taxi. The taxi came out on top. While the children were away at school, Marcy was not present at home. I piled all of my personal belongings and clothing on the bed that was designated for guests. There was no doubt in my mind that Todd and Terry would have inquiries regarding the arrangements. Marcy was going to be the one to explain it to me. A little under an hour was all that was required to get my new living quarters in order. I had a lot of different thoughts going through my head at the time. During this time, there was absolutely no way in hell that this was going to carry out in the manner that Marcy had planned. My first order of business was to retrieve my old phone recorder from the basement, where it had been hidden away. Despite the fact that it was only compatible with the landline phone, I had no other choice. A significant majority of Marcy's calls were made using her mobile phone. The process of hooking it up and concealing it behind some old paint cans ended up taking only 20 minutes. It was the initial takeoff. It seemed to me that I was in a position where I could return to my previous job. Even though they provided me with a few pain pills, I was not entirely convinced that I should take them and then operate machinery. Instead, I went and got a couple of Tylenols that were extremely strong. My relationship with the guys I worked with was one of the things that Marcy had grossly miscalculated from the beginning. During our conversation, I detailed everything that had occurred the night before. Every single one of them had ideas, some of which were good and some of which were bad. Knowing that your friends would be there for you whenever you required their assistance was a pleasing feeling. We were about to begin an 8-hour shift, and each of us was going to spend that time pondering different ways in which we could put things right. When we were in the middle of the shift, we took a break for supper. Okay, did anybody come up with an idea? Glenn was the first person to raise his voice. There is a cousin of mine who works for the son of a witch, but I do not have any ideas about what it is. Every aspect of the vehicle's detailing is handled by him. According to what I have gathered, he despises Del Marco. In the event that you require any information regarding the company, the buildings, or the shifts that are available, he is able to assist you. Glenn, that will unquestionably be of assistance to you. Who else is there? Danny, I have 2 pistols and 2 shotguns in my possession. Each and every one of them is open to you. There is no cause for concern in this regard because none of them are registered. Thanks, Barry, but that sounds a little bit more drastic than I was hoping for. Well, hell, you don't even want to hear my idea then. The remark that Freddie made was met with a small amount of laughter. Freddie, please tell us. Don't be shy, tell us now. I thought we could tie him to a tree with his legs spread out and build a bonfire Indian style between his legs. Despite the fact that everyone admired Freddie's concept, it was rejected by a unanimous vote. Kai was the only person who had not offered anything, so while we were eating our lunches, we all just looked at him. What is it? Please don't look at me in that manner. To be honest, I do have a concept, but it is a little bit shaky. Spill it, Kai. I seem to recall reading somewhere about a prison in Arizona that wore pink jumpsuits for all of the sexual offenders who were incarcerated there. Intentionally, it was meant to be embarrassing. Even though I am aware that Tony is not a child molester, I can't help but think that something like that would make him feel extremely embarrassed. You mean to say that you put on him a pink jumpsuit? Wouldn't he just remove it from his body? I was thinking that if you could get in there, tie him up, and then spray paint him all over with pink paint, that might do the trick. But he would know who did it. You have to make him unconscious first and then leave him tied to the chair until they find him. What is the best way to go about it? Are you going to hit him over the head or use drugs? In what way do you intend to proceed? I am able to acquire a taser. All that is required of you is to sneak up on him and zap him. The way you phrase that makes it sound simpler than it actually is. What is the best way to approach him when he is by himself, and how can we get close enough to him without him noticing? I am not in possession of all the answers. All I could think was that it was an idea. Soon after, the buzzer rang, and it was time to return to the machines for another 4 hours. Because I had not yet reached my quota for the evening, the other guys pitched in to make up the difference. When I arrived home, Marcy was already asleep. At the very least, she was honoring her promise to refrain from bringing the jerk into the house. My plan of action was completely a mystery to me at the time. Most of the things that the guys and I talked about were similar to pranks that were played in high school. At this point, I might as well leave a bag of dog poop that is on fire on his doorstep. I required some genuine retribution. I got up at noon, which was the time. Marcy was moving around the house, and I could hear her doing so even though the children were at school. I quickly took a shower, shaved my head, and then I started walking out the door. The husband, good morning to you. Are you sure you don't have a kiss for your wife? Her hand was resting on her hip as she stood by the kitchen sink, and she had a smirk on her face. Suddenly, I turned around and walked out of the room. The snide remark that she made did not warrant a response. Both lunch and some time to myself were necessities for me. The remaining portion of the afternoon was spent by me wasting time. My wife's sex buddy was the target of my attention, and I was trying to figure out what I could do to him without causing too much trouble for myself. When I got home from work tonight, I had to start getting ready for the next day. I made the decision to never eat any meals at home again. In spite of the fact that it was just about the only time I had to spend with the boys, I just couldn't bring myself to consume any more of Marcy's culinary creations. The time for work arrived before I even realized it. Things were going pretty smoothly up until the break for supper. "Danny, I got the taser in the car. I don't know if you can use it for anything, but at least you can have it for self-protection." Cinny was proud of himself. "Don't forget to pick it up before you go home." "Did you ever use the damn thing?" "No. We can try it out. Who wants to volunteer?" The only response was a chorus of groans around the table. Nobody had any new ideas, but they all were willing to support anything I came up with. I felt better knowing that I had a few friends. Things were normal at the house when I got home. It would be a short night for me. Working the graveyard shift sort of screws up your sleeping habits, especially on the weekends. I was up earlier than normal. Todd and Terry jumped at the chance to spend some time at Chuck E. Cheese's. Marcy didn't seem to mind at all, especially when I told her we would be out all day. "Danny, I'm going to need you to take a few vacation days the week after next. Tony's friend Wally is coming in from Detroit, and we are going to be taking a 3-night, 4-day cruise down to Cancun. If you can't do it, could you see if your parents can?" Let me get this straight. You are going to take a cruise with 2 guys? That sounds a little sleazy even for you. Don't be crude, Danny. It does fit you. Wally will be rooming with Karen. They're old friends from a couple of years ago. Oh well, golly gee, I guess that makes it all right then. I tried my best to be sarcastic. I definitely would be thanking Karen later. Of course, I got started on the day way too early. In order to kill some time before Chuck E. Cheese's opened, we went to the Hobby Lobby near the house. The boys were big enough to put together most of the plastic models that lined the shelves. The end results were not anything to brag about, but they had a lot of fun. I left them to explore the hundreds of boxes and wandered around, amazed at all the crap that was available for creative housewives to buy. I guess if Marcy had been into crafts, she wouldn't have brought home that hairy gorilla. It was too late now. My eyes lit up when I discovered rows and rows of designer paint and spray cans. There they were, 6 beautiful cans of pink paint in aerosol cans. They didn't have as much paint in them as the ones at Lowe's or Home Depot, but they were pink. It was the only place I saw paint that color in a can. Of course, I took this as a sign and bought all 6 cans. Todd ended up with a monster truck kit, and Terry opted for the tugboat. I didn't even know they made plastic tugboat models. Before we left, I also picked up a package of 10 large plastic cable wraps. They were about 18 inches long and looked like they would do the job. By that time, Chuck E. Cheese's was ready for business. The kids killed about 4 hours and 2 pizzas before they burned out. We picked up a pack of cheap bread and went to the park. The ducks ate it all in the first 10 minutes, but we stuck around for another couple of hours before heading for my parents' house. Mom and Dad were happy to have us for supper and the evening. Todd and Terry spent most of the night in front of the television, and I took advantage of the time to brief Dad on the situation with Marcy. I realized that I was actually telling people about what was going on before Marcy could. She was threatening to do what I was doing myself. Hell, that almost made her threat worthless. Dad promised that they would be there to take care of the boys no matter what happened. That would make things a lot easier to carry out. I didn't want the boys hurt by the situation. At about 9 o'clock, I called Marcy to let her know we would be staying at my parents' house for the night. I got the machine. After a big breakfast at IPE, we arrived home to find Marcy still in bed. I immediately fired up the lawnmower and started in the back by the bedrooms. Todd and Terry were anxious to start on their models even though it was a beautiful day outside. I let them go. I decided to make a full day of the lawn work. There was edging and pruning to be done. Things didn't go as fast as normal because I found myself stopping to chat a lot. I had a perfectly good pair of hedge clippers but decided to borrow a set from Mike Fielding across the street. His wife Mary was one of the biggest gossips in the neighborhood. I explained to Mike that there might be some unfamiliar cars parked by the house because Marcy would be entertaining some male friends. Everything should be okay unless they get drunk and rowdy. If that happens, just call the police. It was hard for me to control things since I worked nights. Larry Finley was on the board of directors at the local church. I borrowed a spark plug wrench from him and apologized for Marcy's recent wild behavior. Of course, he wanted to know what I meant. Larry was a bigger gossip than Mary Fielding. 10 minutes later, he had enough fodder to last a month. I didn't break for lunch and finished work about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. After a quick shower, I went to Rose's Cantina and ordered the most expensive meal on the menu. I'm not sure what it was, but it sure was good. I spent the rest of the evening with my brother Dave and his family. Dad had already told him what was going on. I spent the night on his couch. My wife had a great plan. She was going to force me into obedience by threatening to expose me as if I refused to condone and support her infidelity, she would make my life miserable. It was an interesting idea, but it sure had a lot of holes in it. In less than a week, I had already told everybody what was going on. That sort of negated her threat. I was also able to make her look more like a cheap 304 than she had ever imagined. I don't think she ever anticipated any backlash. I stopped by the house the next afternoon to change for work, and a fuming Marcy was waiting for me. "What the hell have you been telling the neighbors? Karen said that you told everyone that I was running an escort house here at night." "Oh, that is not true, Marcy. I simply explained to them that you might be entertaining men while I was at work and that they shouldn't get excited about it." "Well, that's not how it is going around." "Whom else have you been talking to?" "Everybody. I figured I would tell them before you did. It seemed easier that way. I didn't say anything to your parents or your sisters. You should probably do that before they hear the rumors." "Damn it, Danny, you are making me look like a 304. "Well, that's only fair. You were going to make me look like an a-hole." "I am sorry, darling, but I have to get to work. I got to spend a little time with the boys before leaving." The hardest part was not getting the quality time that I wanted with them. Glenn had the best news of the night. Continental Classics closed down at 9 o'clock on Thursday night so that Tony could personally make out all the paychecks for Friday. He hated to be disturbed while doing the payroll, so even the cleaning crew was gone. Kai took a few minutes and showed me how to use the taser. Nobody would volunteer to test it. The plan was coming together. If I got caught, and I fully expected to, I would be looking at some jail time. I didn't care. Tony DeMarco had to be humiliated. If I got arrested, I would make sure that all the newspapers and TV stations got the complete story. Any publicity like that would crush him or at least piss him off so bad that he did something dumb. For the next few days, I went home only to sleep, shower, and change clothes. I hadn't eaten a meal at home since the first day. Finally, Thursday arrived. I arranged for my truck to have a dead battery so Kai picked me up. The floor supervisor never really bothered the brake guys too much. As long as we met our quotas and the quality was good, they left us alone. One thing that would work to my advantage was the looser requirements for the job. Between the apron, gloves, and welding goggles, we all pretty much looked alike. At 8:30, I slipped out the back door. The guys would be taking turns working my station. One of their posts would, of course, be vacant, but no one really cared. Toilet breaks were routine and never controlled. The main thing was to give the illusion that I never left. I walked into the employee door at Continental Classics and headed straight for the bathroom. At about 9 o'clock, somebody made a quick check before turning out the lights. 10 minutes later, I put on some latex gloves and walked out of the toilet into a semi-dark office area. His desk overlooked the showroom area, so his back was to the door. It looked like it was going to be easier than I expected. He had a computer in front of him, but he was pecking away on an old adding machine with paper tape. He never heard me approach. I hit Tony with the taser right on the back of his neck. His body jerked upright, and I thought he was going to turn around, so I let him have it again. This time, he gave a few twitches and then relaxed. Perfect. I put 2 plastic cable wraps on each leg and 2 on each arm. I brought an old necktie along to use as a blindfold. He was being very cooperative. I wheeled his chair over to the glass window by the showroom. He would be in perfect view when his people showed up for work in the morning. It was a pretty pink color, but I had to use a lot more than I anticipated. The paint was being absorbed into his clothes as fast as I sprayed it on. It took at least 3 coats on any one area to show up like I wanted it to. I had just enough paint, but barely. He looked pretty and pink after I finished. I carefully packed everything back up. I had expected Tony to wake up while I was decorating him, but he never budged. I had also planned to remove the necktie blindfold before leaving. I checked my watch several times. I was well within the time frame I had laid out, but I still wanted Tony awake before I left. 5 minutes later, I was starting to worry. I tried to feel for a pulse with no success. Maybe I couldn't feel it because of the latex gloves. I took a glove off and tried again. There was still no pulse. I tried to find a pulse on his neck like I saw them do on TV, but I still couldn't find anything. I removed the blindfold and then touched his eyeball with a pencil tip. He didn't blink. There was no kind of reflex. Needless to say, I started to panic. I did have the presence of mind to put the latex glove back on and wipe everything that I might have touched. I put the necktie in my pocket and then cut off all the plastic ties. You could see the marks that the pink paint left when I removed them. It looked odd. The white skin under the necktie made him look like a pink raccoon. I took another minute to make sure I didn't overlook anything and then left for work. I dropped all the crap that I had with me, including the taser, into a storm sewer on the way back to the shop. 10 minutes later, I was back making brake shoes. Nobody noticed that I was absent. As soon as the shift was over, I told the guys what happened. They were all accessories, so I was pretty sure nobody would say anything. Freddie was very impressed. None of them seemed worried. Kai drove me home, and we both made a mental note of the time that he dropped me off. I didn't get to sleep as long as I usually did. At about 10 o'clock, Marcy came barging into my room. "What the hell did you do? What did you do, you little a-hole?" Of course, I just rolled over and gave her a perplexed look. "What the heck are you talking about, woman? Tony's dead." Karen called and said they found him in his office this morning dead. "I believe that you had something to do with it, and I will see to it that you pay, you a-hole." That was the second time she called me an a-hole in 5 minutes. It was pretty clear that I was not going to be getting any more sleep, so I stumbled out of bed and hit the john. I was in no hurry to face the Wicked Witch of the East, so I took a long hot shower and a slow shave. I even put on a little aftershave just to aggravate my loving wife. I never made it to the coffee pot. A tall man was standing in the living room talking to Marcy. His hair was cut very close, and he had on a dark suit. The witch had called the cops, there was no doubt about it. I shook my head and walked into the kitchen to get my first cup of the day. Marcy had a sarcastic little smirk on her face as I sat down in my favorite recliner. My uninvited guest sat when I did. "Mr. Mercer, my name is Detective Donnell Green, with an E. I am here concerning the death of Anthony DeMarco last night. Your wife indicated that you and Mr. DeMarco had a disagreement last week, and I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions." "Sure, I have no objections, but not here." "What do you mean?" "If you want to talk, let's do it in your office, not in my home. Is that okay with you?" I couldn't help but notice the frown that came across Marcy's face. I was pretty sure that she had expected to be included in the discussion. "My car or yours, Mr. Mercer? I have a few other things I need to do, so I'll meet you there." "Any special office?" "Second floor, rear, room 206. Just turn right when you get off the elevator. I'll see you shortly." Marcy was fuming as I put on my shoes. I never got to finish the coffee, so I just dumped it in the sink. I turned and smiled as I walked out the door. I guess you're going to get what you wanted, sweetheart. What are you talking about? What the hell do you mean, Danny? 10 minutes later, I was sitting with Detective Green on the second floor in the municipal building. For the next hour, Detective Green asked all the right questions, and I had all the right answers. He was trying to be discreet about the affair without ignoring it or rubbing it in my face. Of course, I had to admit that I had a motive, but that I never got a chance to do anything about it. It was a serious situation, but I tried my best to be congenial without being a smartass. I think he appreciated the fact that I made his job easier even though I didn't have an answer for him. The most interesting part of the discussion was finding out that Tony died from some sort of heart problem. He had a pacemaker installed a couple of years ago, and I guess it didn't mix too well with the taser. Of course, they knew about the taser from the marks on his neck. I felt bad that Tony died, and yet I was also glad. Detective Green gave me the usual don't leave town speech and said he would get back with me after verifying my alibi. Wow, I never thought I would need an alibi for anything. It was sort of exciting. We parted on good terms. I got the feeling that Donnell Green was on my side. It made me feel warm all over. I grabbed a bite to eat and watched the TV news. There was a segment about the death of a local businessman. It mentioned that there were no relatives in the area. I entered the bank accounts and then took the time to have a nice breakfast. There were things to be done at home. Marcy was not there when I got back. It took me 30 minutes to move all of my things back into the master bedroom and all of Marcy's things into the guest room. The guest room had one small closet and one dresser. Here is the corrected version of your passage.